Today, S story is called The Lantern of the Last Dream and is part of the Once Upon a Time in Another Place series. Once upon a time in another place, there was a kingdom crafted entirely of music. There were crystal harps growing wild in meadows, glockenspiel waterfalls tumbling down moss-covered stones, and a palace whose towers chimed in perfect harmony. But our story begins with a king whose voice was breaking. Once, when he sang, birds joined him in joyful chorus, and flowers lifted their faces to the melody. Now his song sounded thin and hollow, as if the music had leached out of his bones. This troubled him greatly, especially since the health of his kingdom depended on his voice. For in this place, music wasn't just a thing to be heard, it was a thing to be shared. Its notes nourished the fields, its rhythms soothed the streams, and its harmonies wove tapestries of magic across the sky. If the king couldn't make music anymore, the kingdom would wither. So he did everything he could think of to find the reason for his silent song. He consulted wise trees who creaked riddles in the wind. He sought the advice of babbling brooks who rippled prophecies through reeds. But none could tell him why his voice had fled. Finally, he met a wandering musician whose lute sang with tales from faraway lands. Perhaps, she suggested, the king needed to seek inspiration beyond his borders. But how could he leave his duties? How could he step away from his fading kingdom? The musician strummed a chord, her eyes shining with understanding. "You need a song to hold your music while you're gone," she said, "a melody strong enough to carry your kingdom until you return." Though skeptical, the king took her advice. He commissioned his most skilled court composer to write him a song powerful enough to sustain his realm in his absence. The composer toiled for days over his instrument, tapping out complex rhythms and plucking harp strings till his fingers bled. At last he had it, a majestic tune woven with threads of starlight and sorrow, courage and hope. The king learned the notes by heart, committing them to memory so he could hum them should he forget. Then he set off, accompanied by his loyal knight, towards the furthest reaches of his wandering mind. Now, at first, the music flowed easily, its vibrant notes echoing across valleys and hills, sustaining the kingdom in the king's wake. But as the days passed and the king's travels took him deeper into unknown lands, the melody began to waver. Fearful of forgetting the song, he started to rush, his voice cracking with effort as he raced against the fading notes. One evening, exhausted and afraid, he stumbled into a dark wood. Here, the canopy was so thick that not a single ray of sun could pierce the shadows. And here, the very trees seemed to lean in, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to grab at the dwindling song within him. Terrified he would forget, the king stopped. In the midst of the darkening wood, tears welled in his eyes. Suddenly, a luminescent clearing appeared before him. In its center sat a small cottage made of glistening dewdrops and sparkling pebbles. Light streamed from its windows, carrying with it the faintest strains of the king's forgotten melody. Hope surged through him. He stumbled forward, his hand outstretched, as if trying to catch a falling star. But as he neared the cottage, he hesitated. He could feel the song growing stronger within, but he also sensed a presence guarding its magic. Just then, a woman stepped out onto the cottage's porch. She wore a dress spun from moonlight and leaves, and a crown of twisted vines adorned her hair. Her eyes, though, were what held his gaze, for they shone with the wisdom of ancient stars. "Are you the keeper of this wood?" the king asked. She inclined her head. "For as long as music has echoed in your heart, I have guarded this place. You seek to recover your song, but are afraid to enter the stillness required to find it." The king nodded, surprised by her knowing. "Then come," she said, gesturing to the cottage. "Your song awaits." He hesitated. "And what of my kingdom? Will it wither in my absence?" "If you don't return with a steady song, yes. But if you come seeking music within, then your kingdom will bloom anew." He took a deep breath, his knight close behind, and stepped into the luminous glow. Now, inside, the cottage was filled with instruments of every kind, each crafted from natural materials: flutes fashioned from willow branches, drums from hollow logs, lyres spun from spider silk and honeysuckle. Yet the one that caught the king's eye was a harp made of pure moonlight and shadows, resting silently in a corner. The woman noticed his gaze. "That is the weaver's harp," she explained. "With it, you can mend your melody, strengthen your song." The king approached hesitantly. As he reached out to touch the harp, though, the woman placed a hand on his arm. "Are you ready to let go of your fear and embrace the silence?" she asked. The king closed his eyes, drawing strength from her words. When he opened them, he saw not just a harp, but an entire universe reflected in its strings. With trembling fingers, he plucked a note, then another. The sound was unlike any he'd ever heard, resonating with the deepest parts of himself. And as he played, the clearing beyond the cottage walls began to bloom with vibrant music. Flowers raised their faces to the melody, their colors intensifying in the newfound light. Trees swayed in time with the rhythm, their branches forming a leafy dance floor. Even the shy stream peeked out from under a nearby bridge, drawn by the music's enchantment. The king played until the last sliver of daylight slipped away. And as the first stars pricked the darkening sky, he finished the song he'd been given, not with a flourish, but with a whisper. Then, as the last note faded, he heard something new, something born from the silence left in its wake. It was a song of his own. With hesitant fingers, he continued playing, coaxing out a melody that poured from his very being. And in that moment, the clearing blossomed with a brilliance that rivaled the heavens. New music flowed from the weaver's harp, intermingling with the king's song, weaving a tapestry of sounds so enchanting, so alive, it thrummed with magic. The king played until dawn, until the first rays of sunlight dripped through the trees like liquid gold. Only then did he stop. Beside him, the woman smiled, her eyes shining with starlight. "Your kingdom is safe now," she said, "for you have remembered that true music isn't just about what you play, but how you play it." The king turned to her, gratitude swelling in his chest. "How can I ever thank you?" he asked. "Return home," she replied, "and share the music you found here. Let it nourish your land and strengthen your voice. That is your thanks." He bowed his head in understanding. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, it was time to go. He thanked the woman again and, accompanied by his knight, walked back into the darkening wood. As the trees closed around them, the music faded, leaving only the echo of a melody in its wake. Now, as the king journeyed back to his kingdom, the music he'd rediscovered pulsed within him, strengthening his voice and nourishing his spirit. When he finally returned to his realm, the land was indeed as he'd feared, withered and silent. But with a deep breath, he began to sing. His voice, though shaky at first, grew stronger with each note, carrying with it the echoes of the weaver's harp. As he sang, color returned to the fields, laughter to the streams, and magic to the skies. The people emerged from their homes, their faces alight with wonder as they listened to the new song coursing through the land. The king had found his voice again. The music had returned. And all because he dared to seek the silence within. The end. That night, as the village slept and the lantern swayed in the hush of midnight wind, Eliot stepped beyond the crooked fence. No one saw him go. Not the milk-blue cat curled on the rooftop, not the blackbirds nestled in the ivy. Not even the weathered fence creaked in farewell. The world was holding its breath. With only the moon to light his path, Eliot walked into the woods where even the air seemed to hum a lullaby too slow to hear. This was the Sleepwood. Every villager knew its name, but never said it aloud after sundown, not out of fear, but reverence. The Sleepwood was older than the hills, older than the stars that slept in puddles after rain. They said it only opened for those with dreams stitched deep into their hearts. And tonight it had opened for Eliot. The trees here were tall, not just in size, but in feeling. Their trunks were smooth as candle wax, their bark whispering with 1,000 forgotten names. Their leaves barely rustled, swaying in rhythm with some silent music only the forest could hear. Eliot stepped carefully, feeling moss between his toes, soft and cool like morning bread. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. Even his breath felt too loud, like a voice in a chapel. Then he noticed it, the hum, not sound exactly. More like a vibration that moved through his chest, a warm pulse, steady as a heartbeat. It came from the trees. He placed a hand against one of the trunks, warm. It thrummed gently beneath his fingers. Alive, yes, but more than that. Listening. "Do you hear me?" Eliot whispered. The tree didn't answer in words. But a breeze stirred, brushing his hair like a mother's hand, and somewhere above, a leaf spiraled down, slow as snowfall. He caught it. Veined in pale blue, it shimmered in the moonlight and held a faint scent lavender, maybe, or something older. Memory. He tucked it into his pocket and kept walking. As he wandered deeper, the trees grew stranger. Some were bent like arches, others leaned toward each other like old friends sharing secrets. One had hollow knots that pulsed faintly with light, as if dreaming of fireflies. Another dripped something like silver dew, catching moonlight and reflecting Eliot's face older, somehow. Wiser, he passed a thicket where the branches looked like cradles, rocking in place though there was no wind. And beneath them, mushrooms glowed in clusters, faint as candle ends. He crouched and touched one. A soft chiming sound echoed in his ears, a bell, a lullaby, a memory. He pulled back, startled. But the sound faded like mist, and all was still again. Then he saw the arch. It wasn't made of wood or stone, but of braided branches woven together, trembling ever so slightly, as if breathing. Above the arch was a single word etched in moss, returnless. He hesitated, returnless. The word didn't frighten him, it rang with truth. This was not a path for those looking to go back. This was a journey for those willing to be changed. Eliot stepped through. The forest beyond the arch deepened. Light dimmed, and yet everything around him glowed softly luminous bark, whispering ferns, sleepy-eyed vines. It was not dark. It was dreaming. The hum grew louder, not in sound, but in feeling. It pulsed in his bones now, steady and strong. He began to sense something else in the air. Not danger, but presence. He wasn't alone. From behind a leaning birch, a shape moved. Slow, graceful, barely more than a shimmer. It stepped into view. A deer, but not like any he'd ever seen. Its fur was pale gray, its eyes moon-white, and from its back grew slender branches tipped with flickering leaves. A single glowing moth rested between its antlers. The deer gazed at him, utterly still. Eliot lowered his eyes, unsure why, but it felt right. When he looked up again, the deer had turned, stepping silently between the trees. He followed. They moved through winding trails that hadn't existed moments before. Over roots shaped like sleeping cats, under arches of weeping willow. Each step forward felt like walking into a memory someone else had once dreamt. Eventually, the deer stopped beside a still pond. The water reflected not just the trees, but stars, far too many stars for the sky above. The deer looked into the pond, then back at Eliot. He stepped forward. In the reflection, he saw himself not just now, but in flashes. Him as a child cradling a broken toy. Him laughing in the rain. Him alone beneath the crooked fence, watching the horizon. And then him holding a lantern. The glow was soft. It flickered like breath. He blinked and the reflection vanished. Only the stars remained. The deer turned and walked away, disappearing into the humming woods. Eliot stood still, hands trembling faintly. Then, just above the pond, a pale owl landed on a branch. Its feathers were ruffled like old parchment, and its eyes were wide and watchful. It didn't blink. Then, without moving its beak, it spoke. Not aloud, but Eliot heard it clear and still and slow. Name the thing you came to find. Eliot's lips parted. He didn't know the answer, except he did. Somewhere deep within, under layers of silence and time, the truth stirred. He whispered, "The lantern." The owl blinked once, slowly, then keep walking. And remember, some trees dream of being human. With that, it lifted into the sky and vanished like mist at dawn. Eliot looked around. The path ahead shimmered faintly, lined with tiny lights, moths, perhaps, or fallen stars waiting to be noticed. He walked on, and the sleepwood hummed behind him. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this piece. It was originally written for a creative writing course that I took during the summer of 2021. When I wrote this, I had no idea that it would become the foundation of the world of alder and ash, so it was really fun to look back on recently and see where those ideas first sprouted. I want to talk about a few elements that went into creating this scene because I think they really set the tone for what came later. First off, the forest. This scene takes place in the Whispering Wood, which is a very important place in the books. It's where the barrier between our world and the world of alder and ash is thinnest, and where magic and memories linger. So to reflect that, I wanted to make the forest feel alive and aware, something that had been around for a very long time and had seen many, many stories unfold. I used phrases like, "the forest opened into silence," and "the forest felt aware," to try and give the woods a kind of sentience. Next, we have the clearing and the river. These are the main places where Eliot confronts his past and reconnects with the magic that he lost faith in. So I wanted them to feel peaceful and regenerative. I also wanted to hint at the power that lay dormant beneath the surface of this world. The gleam that shimmered in the river is a motif that comes up a lot in these books. It represents the magic that's present throughout. Alder and ash, the fact that it's reflected and refracted in so many different ways reflects the complicated nature of magic itself. It's not always easy to see or understand, but it's always there. Finally, we have the bridge. This is where Eliot has to face his fears and choose to trust in himself and in the process of remembering. I wanted the bridge to feel delicate and timeless. So I chose imagery that evoked fragility and continuity. Words like "worn smooth" and "supported by nothing he could see" emphasize the idea that this bridge isn't just a physical structure. It's also a metaphor for the connections that we forge through our memories and our stories. So those are the main elements that went into this scene. But what about the character of the Watcher? Who are they and what do they represent? Well, in a way, the Watcher is the embodiment of the bridge itself. They are the keepers of stories and memories, and they test Eliot to make sure that he is worthy of crossing into alder and ash. But they are also more than just a guardian. They are a guide and a teacher who helps Eliot to remember who he is and what he is capable of. The Watcher represents the potential that lies within all of us. We all have the ability to connect with the magical world around us, but sometimes we need a little help remembering that. Now, let's talk about the ending of this scene. What does it mean for Eliot to be almost ready? What does it mean to be almost ready? Well, it means that he's close to regaining his powers, but he still has a lot to learn about himself and about the world around him. It's a bit of foreshadowing for what's to come in the rest of the story. I wanted to end this scene on a note of mystery and anticipation. So I didn't give Eliot all the answers. Instead, I left him with more questions. What is the market? Why is Eliot going there? What will he find there? These are all things that we'll explore in the next scene. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about the significance of dreams. Dreams play a big role in these books, and they were very important to me when I was writing them. Dreams are a way of exploring the subconscious mind and tapping into the imagination. They allow us to access parts of ourselves that we might not normally be able to reach. In this scene, I wanted to capture that sense of wonder and possibility that comes with dreaming. I use phrases like faces, maybe, or moments, or dreams not yet dreamt to evoke the fluidity and ambiguity of the subconscious. There's also a line later on that says, "He stepped forward, the question still echoing in his heart." This is a reminder that dreams don't always give us clear answers. Sometimes they just leave us with a sense of wonder and open up new possibilities for us. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the use of light and color. Light is a powerful symbol in this scene, and it's used to represent magic and transformation. The moonlight is a recurring motif in these books, and it's often associated with magic and mystery. In this scene, I use moonlight to create a sense of enchantment and otherworldliness. For example, I talk about the moonlight and faith that supports the bridge. I also use color to create atmosphere and symbolism. The warm silver of the river and the melting snow of the watcher's robe both create a sense of peace and tranquility. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you know that I love to weave in little details that connect to things that happen later on in the series. And the scene is no exception. There are a couple of small details that foreshadow what happens later on in the books. First, there's the ribbon that the Watcher gives to Eliot. It turns out that this is a very important artifact that has the power to restore magic to those who believe in it. Second, there's the mention of the market. This is actually the first time that the market is mentioned in the entire series. And it's a very important place because that's where Eliot meets some of his closest friends and allies. All in all, I'm really happy with how this scene turned out. I think it captures the essence of the world of Alder and Ash really well. The scene establishes the main themes of the book and introduces a lot of important symbols and motifs. It also sets up the central conflict of the story and gives us a sense of the challenges that Eliot will face. Most importantly, though, it introduces us to a world that's full of magic and wonder. A world where dreams and reality are intertwined and where anything is possible. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time. It's me. Welcome to my channel. Today we're discussing how to develop compelling antagonists. We'll look at some quotes about writing villains from various authors and analyze an example together. Some people write villains because they're fun. They get to be creative, do bad things, and break the rules. That's pretty cool. However, if you want to appeal to readers emotionally, you need to ask yourself why your character is acting this way. What makes them tick? What needs are they trying to fulfill, or what problems are they trying to solve? So here's our quote from Brandon Sanderson. Villains are like romantic partners. We don't fall in love with the charming ones, but rather grow to love the person underneath that. In this quote, Sanderson isn't talking about romantic partners in the traditional sense, but anyone who's in a relationship knows what he means. Initially, you're attracted to someone's charm, good looks, and wit. However, a successful long-term relationship is built on mutual respect for who both parties really are, flaws and all. If you're writing a villain, dig deep into the root of their motivations. Why do they think the way they do? What events in their lives shape them? What traumas do they carry with them? Perhaps they were once heroes themselves until a tragic event caused them to lose faith in everything they believed in. Maybe they always felt overlooked or underestimated and now lash out violently to make a difference. Maybe they're driven by a desire to protect someone they love, even if their methods are questionable. Whatever it is, if you can find a reason that makes sense within the logic of your world, you'll have a much easier time humanizing your antagonist. Next up, we have another quote from Margaret Atwood, who says, "We don't make villains. They're born." In contrast to Sanderson's idea that villains are made, Atwood believes that villains are born with certain predispositions that lead them down a darker path. She might be referring to a villain's inherent flaws, like pride or ambition, that, if left unchecked, will eventually lead to their corruption. Think of Shakespeare's Macbeth, whose lust for power corrupts him and leads him to commit terrible crimes. Or Victor Frankenstein, a brilliant scientist who becomes obsessed with creating life, and in doing so loses sight of humanity. I believe that a compelling antagonist is often driven by a powerful motivation, maybe even a noble goal, but gets corrupted along the way. This gradual descent into darkness can be caused by external factors, such as societal pressures or traumatic experiences, or internal struggles with their own nature. By exploring these ideas, you can create characters that feel real and relatable despite their evil deeds. So let's take a look at our example. Eliot from the Starless Sea by Aaron Morgenstern is a young man who discovers a mysterious book that leads him to a magical underground world known as the Starless Sea. He soon meets a cast of unforgettable characters and embarks on a thrilling quest filled with wonder and adventure. But who is the main villain of the story? Actually, there isn't one. There are several antagonists who stand in Eliot's way. For example, there's the God of Stories, who wants to prevent Eliot from leaving the Starless Sea and becoming a mere mortal again. And there's also the masked man who serves as a guardian of sorts for the books and their secrets. These characters aren't pure evil, nor do they lack any defining characteristics beyond being obstacles for Eliot. They are complex individuals with their own unique traits, values, fears, and desires. Even the antagonist who serves as the closest thing to a villain in the story, Mirabelle, has a well-developed backstory and understandable motivations for her actions. Instead of having a clear-cut villain, Morgenstern crafts an intricate plot where various forces and characters challenge Eliot at every turn. These challenges push him to grow and change throughout the story, ultimately making him a better hero. Let's take a closer look at one of the antagonistic characters, Mirabelle. She is introduced as a ruthless and cunning leader of a group of mercenaries who will stop at nothing to achieve her goals. However, as the story progresses, we learn that she's motivated by a desire to protect her people and the magical world they inhabit from outside threats. She's not inherently evil, but rather a tragic figure who has been hardened by a cruel and unforgiving world. By giving her a backstory and understandable motivations, Morgenstern makes her a much more compelling character. Ultimately, this approach of not relying on a single villain allows for a more nuanced exploration of good and evil. It challenges the reader to consider that morality is not always black or white, and that even antagonists can have sympathetic qualities. Now, let's look at the next quote from Ursula K. Le Guin. The hero and the villain are two sides of the same coin. Both are rigid, self-limiting, self-righteous. Both believe they must impose their values on everybody else too. Here, Le Guin points out that heroes and villains are not so different after all. Both can be rigid in their beliefs, self-righteous, and unwilling to compromise. Sometimes heroes become villains when their values are challenged, and vice versa. Take Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, for example. Initially presented as a noble and heroic figure destined to become king, he grapples with doubts about his abilities and responsibilities throughout the story. At times, he even appears reluctant to embrace his heroic role. Meanwhile, one of the story's antagonists, Faramir, is initially portrayed as a potential villain, tempted by the power offered to him by Sauron. However, he ultimately chooses to resist evil and proves himself to be a more honorable and compassionate leader than his brother, Boromir. Okay, let's do one more quote. This one comes from J.K. Rowling, who says, "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." Now, this quote is pretty famous, but it's still important for writers to keep in mind. It reminds us that it's not enough to create a villain with a cool backstory or a cool set of abilities. They must also make meaningful choices that reveal their true nature. Rowling understood this well. In Harry Potter, Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs is a terrifying villain who uses his intelligence and charm to manipulate those around him. He's highly cultured, articulate, and charismatic, which makes him all the more unsettling as he uses these traits to prey on others. Yet Hannibal is shown to be capable of compassion and empathy, particularly towards those he sees as kindred spirits. When he encounters Clarice Starling, a young FBI trainee, he recognizes her determination and resilience and takes a personal interest in her development. While Hannibal's actions are undeniably horrific, his capacity for empathy and understanding makes him a more complex and thought-provoking character. He's not just a mindless monster, but a human being with both positive and negative qualities. Thanks so much for watching today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment about your favorite villain. I always appreciate your support. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update. Thanks again for watching. See you later. Eliot walked beneath a sky that had forgotten how to be dark. The stars above were not scattered, but arranged deliberate, like they had once been sewn there by careful hands. And the path he followed now glowed gently underfoot, as though lit from below by memories too soft to see. In his arms he carried the jar labeled Lantern. Its glow had grown warmer, not brighter, as though reacting to the nearness of something long awaited. The market had vanished behind him, dissolved into dreamlight and echoes, but Eliot did not look back. Ahead, rising from a slope of whispering grasses, was a staircase. Not stone, not wood, but made entirely of old keys, some rusted, some golden, some small as feathers or large as spoons. They clicked faintly as the wind passed, a sound like chimes trapped in deep thought. Eliot placed his foot on the first step. The entire staircase shivered, not from weight but recognition. Step by step, he climbed. With each key he stepped on, he felt something in the air shift. Memories brushed past him, none his own, yet familiar. A mother singing, a door closing. A promise kept too long. The climb took no time at all, and also forever. At the top sat a round house, low and wide, nestled into the curve of the hill like it had been waiting centuries to be noticed. The roof was thatched in starlight, the walls breathed with a soft glow. And from every window spilled the flicker of candles, hundreds, thousands, each flame dancing to a rhythm slower than time. Eliot stood at the threshold. No door barred his way. Only a soft curtain of smoke-scented air that parted as he stepped forward. Inside, the air was warm and sweet, tinged with the smell of beeswax, old parchment, and something softer like sleep caught in a bottle. The room curved around him. Shelves lined every wall, each holding candles of every shape and color. Some were tall and thin like the necks of cranes. Others were squat and square or swirled like seashells. Some flickered wildly, others barely moved at all. But they were not just candles. They were dreams. Each flame burned with the last dream of someone who had passed into sleep long ago. The candlekeeper did not store memories. She stored final wishes, gentle departures, the last things people saw before they drifted beyond the veil of night. Eliot approached a table at the center of the room, where a single candle stood, tall and pale blue, unlit. Beside it sat a woman. Her hair was silver and long, trailing down across the floor like threads of silk. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her eyes were closed, but as Eliot neared, she opened them, bright, ancient, and kind. "You've come far," she said, her voice like melted honey. Eliot nodded. "I think I'm looking for the lantern." She tilted her head. "You carry its name." He held up the jar. Its light pulsed gently in his hands. "You'll need more than that," the candlekeeper whispered. "To find the lantern of the last dream, you must first light your own." She gestured toward the pale blue candle. Eliot hesitated. "I don't know how." The candlekeeper rose and walked to a nearby shelf. From it, she took a small matchbox made of folded bark. Strike the match with a memory, she said, and light the candle with something you've forgotten. He opened the box. Inside were no matches, only 3 slender twigs, each carved with a different word: rain, alone, belong. He took the one marked belong, and in that moment, a memory surfaced. Him, 6 years old, standing in the corner of a room full of laughter. The fire warm, the others smiling, but he watching from afar, unsure how to join. He struck the twig. A quiet flame bloomed blue and gold, like moonlight and hearthlight joined as one. He touched it to the wick of the pale blue candle. It caught instantly. The flame twisted upward in a soft spiral, casting shadows on the ceiling that flickered like pages of an unread story. Then the candle spoke, not aloud but through images, sensations. Eliot saw a bridge, a deer, a ribbon in his pocket, a girl with a box, a market full of silence, and finally a lantern not yet found, but waiting, always waiting. The candle keeper placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is your first flame," she said. "Guard it, carry it. Let it show you what the eyes cannot." Eliot turned to her. "Will I find the lantern?" She smiled, placing a small lantern into his hands. It was empty. "But it was his. You must fill it," she said. "With every piece of yourself you found." He looked at it closely. Tiny etchings lined the base, faint and fading, but familiar. They were pieces of his story. The candle beside him continued to burn. "I don't want it to go out," Eliot said. "It will," she replied. "Everything does. But it leaves light behind." He looked down at the flickering flame and nodded. Outside the windows, the stars had rearranged themselves again. A new pattern, perhaps a map. He stepped toward the door. "Where do I go now?" he asked. The candle keeper's voice was already drifting into the rhythm of the flames. "Follow the river. It runs beneath the world, beneath memory, beneath time." He turned once more, the unlit lantern in one hand, the glowing memory jar in the other. As he crossed the threshold, a breeze carried the scent of beeswax and dreams down the hill after him. And behind him, a single candle flickered quietly on the table, its flame standing tall in the hush of night. Welcome back. I'm excited to share today's prompt with you because it is personal to me. You see, recently we've been taking suggestions from our patrons over on Patreon, and this one came in from a patron. Thank you so much for this suggestion. We really appreciate your feedback. So let's dive into the prompt. I am trying to write a poem about someone who is walking towards something, perhaps a metaphorical journey, but it feels flat. Any advice on how to show rather than tell? How do I bring the reader along on this journey? That's an excellent question, and it's something I'm very familiar with. When you get right down to it, I think we can all agree that most journeys in life are internal. So how do you convey that in your writing without resorting to telling instead of showing? How do you make your readers feel the emotional landscape of your character's journey? That's what we're going to talk about today. First, let's address the fact that sometimes you just have to tell instead of show. If you're a fan of this channel, you probably know that we love to show instead of tell. However, there are instances when telling is necessary. Think of it like this. Telling is often used to relay information. Showing is used to engage the reader. Ideally, these work together. Sometimes showing alone isn't enough. For example, if you want to describe that your character feels lonely, you could show them sitting alone in a crowd, or you could show them reaching out to touch someone only to pull away last minute. But if your character has been feeling lonely for months, it might be necessary to tell instead of show. Maybe something like the loneliness had become a shroud, wrapping him tightly in its folds. By telling instead of showing, you're able to condense time and focus more on the emotion of loneliness. Showing would take more time, and ideally you'd use both. But in this instance, you've established that he's been feeling lonely for a while. So saying it outright allows you to quickly move forward in your story. Now that we've addressed that, let's jump into some ways you can make your showing more engaging. First, let's look at the opening of our sample piece. Eliot walked where maps had no ink. What does that mean? How can we see Eliot walking? Well, we can't. That's telling. But by adding some description, we can turn that sentence into showing. Beneath the candlelit sky, we immediately know the tone of this piece. It's magical, mystical, possibly even dreamlike. Through groves that whispered in languages older than rain, we can hear the forest and we can imagine what it sounds like. Our map may not have ink, but the trees have secrets they're whispering. That tells us a lot about the world Eliot finds himself in. He followed no path is another example of telling. But we can combine this with the next line and use imagery to create a stronger impression. Only the quiet thrum of something calling far below the roots of the world. Now we're hearing the call. We know it's coming from deep within the earth, possibly echoing up through the roots of the trees themselves. This pulls us deeper into Eliot's journey. We don't know where he's going, but we can almost feel the vibrations beneath our feet. The next way to engage your reader is to include sensory details. So far, we've appealed to sound and sight. How about smell, taste, touch? Let's look at this example. The earth beneath him grew cooler, softer. Immediately, we can feel the temperature change. Notice how the adjectives, cooler and softer, also appeal to touch. Moss gave way to fog. We can almost feel the dampness of the moss, see the gray swirling around us. Stones, once firm, now shimmered under his feet like glass. We can see the stones, but we can also feel them shift and move beneath us. The world around Eliot is becoming more dreamlike by the second. It's a subtle effect, but the sensory details pull us deeper into his experience. The final thing I want to point out is pacing. Look at this excerpt. And though no signpost stood, he felt it in his bones. He was nearing the sea. This is important. We know he's nearing the sea, but why is it important that he can feel it in his bones? Does it hurt? Is it exciting? The trick here is to slow down and build suspense. And though no signpost stood, he felt it in his bones. He was nearing the sea. Here we've removed the colon and capitalized se to make this more of a statement. This adds emphasis. We want to know more. What does it mean that he can feel it in his bones? The next line answers our question. The trees faded behind him, replaced by mist and silence. Silence. Why is there silence? Where did the birds go? Did the trees make noise? Was there a rushing waterfall? The sudden quiet tells us as much as the line before it. Next, let's look at this. Then quite suddenly, the land fell away. We can feel the drop. He stood at the edge of a great cliff. We can see it, but what can we feel? Looking down not upon crashing waves, but upon a vast silver stillness stretching to every horizon. The waves weren't crashing, but the water is still. Why? Because it's not water. It's dream. We know this because of the word choice. Silver, crashing waves would have been loud, but the water here is still. It stretches to every horizon. That tells us it must be huge, but the word stillness implies peace. We know that nothing is crashing because the sea is calm, still silent. I hope these examples help you with your own writing. Don't forget to show, not just tell. Engage your reader through sensory detail and pacing. I'll leave the full piece in the description. Thanks for watching and happy writing. A chill wind whips across the sea of stillness, ruffling the surface of the water. You shiver, pulling your worn traveler's cloak tighter around you. Before you, the boat drifts silently towards the shore, bobbing gently like a fallen leaf on a stream. When it touches down, you step out onto the land, feeling the soft pebbled earth cool under your boots. All around you, strange pale stones glisten faintly, their surfaces etched with indecipherable markings that seem to pulse with a forgotten light. Before you rises a tall tower, its peak disappearing into the lavender sky. No door, no steps, no windows break the smooth curve of its sides. Ivy, as white as moonlight, wraps around the stone, rustling softly, not in the wind, but in rhythm. With each gentle sway, it seems to breathe, inhaling and exhaling memories like smoke from a slumbering dragon's nostrils. You stand for a moment, taking in the scene, your gaze drawn to the tower and the mysteries it holds. What brings you to this place? Why do you seek out the secrets hidden within the tower's silent embrace? Perhaps only you hold the answers to those questions. For this moment, the fate of the world hangs in the balance, resting on the choices you make and the path you follow. Will you step closer to the tower and uncover its hidden truths, or turn back from this place and leave its secrets undisturbed? The choice, dear reader, is yours. Where will you go from here? You take a step forward, drawn inexorably to the tower. Your fingers curl into fists, knuckles white against the worn leather of your gloves. The closer you get, the stronger the feeling becomes, a sense of familiarity, of homecoming, yet you cannot name it, cannot place it. A feeling so profound it echoes within the chambers of your soul. The base of the tower offers no obvious entry, no mark, no sign, no latch or keyhole. It is whole, complete, untouched by time. But something calls to you from within, a whisper carried on the wind, promising revelation and understanding. Can you resist its allure? Do you dare to explore the depths of the tower and discover what lies at its heart? You reach out, pressing your palm against the cold stone, a shiver running down your spine. The surface is deceptively warm, like skin, not living, yet once alive. Through your fingertips, you can feel a faint pulse, a heartbeat deep within the stone, steady and reassuring, beckoning you closer. You close your eyes, breathing deeply, letting go of questions and doubts, surrendering to the moment. What secrets will the tower reveal to you? Are you ready to uncover the hidden truths that lie dormant within its ancient walls? With a deep breath, you step closer still. The tower stretches into the lavender sky, its peak lost in a swirling fog that moves with an eerie slowness, like memories surfacing from the depths of a forgotten dream. Ivy, as white as moonlight, clings to the stone, rustling softly with each gentle sway, as if whispering forgotten secrets to the wind. A faint humming resonates from its core, vibrating in harmony with the beating of your heart. Can you hear it too? The melody echoes within the chambers of your soul, stirring something deep within you, awakening a sense of wonder and anticipation. What wonders await you at the top of the tower? What revelations will greet you when you reach its highest peak? You begin to climb, your hands finding purchase on the rough stone, your feet gripping the narrow path. With each upward step, the humming grows louder, filling your ears and resonating through your bones. Above you, the sky widens, revealing a tapestry of stars that twinkles like scattered diamonds on velvet cloth. The wind whispers around you, carrying scents of distant lands and whispers of forgotten lore. Will you persevere in your ascent, or pause to rest and catch your breath? How far will you go? Higher still, the humming intensifies, taking on a rhythmic quality, as if guiding your every move, urging you onward. The white ivy thickens, forming a living lattice that frames the path ahead. Sunlight filters through the leaves, painting dappled patterns on the stone. You pause to catch your breath, heart pounding in your chest, a mixture of excitement and trepidation coursing through you. Are you close to your goal? What awaits you at the very top of the tower? You continue upward, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a longing to understand the source of the enchanting melody that has captured your heart. Above you, the sky deepens, revealing a canopy of stars that twinkles like scattered diamonds on velvet cloth. The wind whispers around you, carrying scents of distant lands and whispers of forgotten lore. Will you persevere in your ascent or pause to rest and catch your breath? How far will you go? As you ascend, the path grows narrower, winding and turning until it becomes a spiral that encircles the tower's core. Every twist and turn reveals new wonders, breathtaking vistas that stretch as far as your eyes can see. You stop to admire the view, feeling a sense of exhilaration mixed with awe at the beauty that surrounds you. What a privilege to be here, to witness the grandeur of the world from this lofty height, yet your journey is not over. The path continues, leading you deeper into the heart of the tower. With each step, the humming grows louder, more insistent, calling to you from the heights above. Above you, the sky opens, revealing a tapestry of stars that twinkles like scattered diamonds on velvet cloth. The wind whispers around you, carrying scents of distant lands and whispers of forgotten lore. Will you persevere in your ascent or pause to rest and catch your breath? How far will you go? With renewed determination, you press on, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a longing to understand the source of the enchanting melody that has captured your heart. The tower seems to hum in response, its ancient stones vibrating with energy as you draw closer to its core. The air shimmers around you, and the path ahead seems to shift and change, teasing you with glimpses of what lies beyond. Will you dare to step into the unknown and discover what secrets await you in the heart of the tower? The spiral path leads you ever upward, the humming growing louder, more insistent, like a siren's call echoing through the chambers of your soul. The walls of the tower open, revealing a glimpse of the vast expanse beyond. As you reach the final bend, the humming reaches a crescendo, vibrating in perfect harmony with the beating of your heart. Before you, the path opens into a circular chamber bathed in a soft ethereal light. In the center stands a mirror, tall and smooth, shaped like the full moon. There is no frame, no stand, just hovering slightly above the ground. Its surface shimmers, reflecting not your image, but a swirling vortex of light that beckons you closer. The light dances and flows, taking on human shapes that twist and turn like phantoms from a forgotten dream. They seem to beckon to you, inviting you to join them in their eternal dance. Are you drawn to their swirling embrace, or do you hesitate, uncertain of what lies beyond? You take a step forward, mesmerized by the hypnotic display of light and shadow. The room is silent save for the gentle hum that seems to emanate from the very walls themselves. As you approach the mirror, the light shifts, revealing a glimpse of what lies beyond. Is it a portal to another realm, a window to a parallel world, or something else entirely? The possibilities seem endless, limited only by the bounds of your imagination. What will you find on the other side of the mirror? What adventures await you in the realms beyond? You reach out, your fingers trembling slightly as you brush against the cool, smooth surface. The light swirls and reacts to your touch, sending ripples of energy that spread outward like ripples on a pond. Are you about to cross over into the unknown, or are you merely glimpsing its wonders without truly crossing over? The choice, dear reader, is yours. What will you do next? On the shore of the sea of stillness, the wind sang songs so old the waves had forgotten the words. Here, the last dreamer stumbled out of the mists, his steps soft as footprints on water. The sand beneath him had known the tread of countless seekers, all looking for an ending. But he was not like them. Though his lantern burned low, it still held a light that was not quite his. Something flickered within, refusing the final surrender to shadow. He clutched the lantern tighter, its warmth seeping into his chilled fingers. The seeker wasn't ready to let it go. Behind him, the mists swirled restlessly, beckoning, whispering promises of oblivion. He had come so far, endured so much to reach this point, the end of paths. And yet, as the sea of stillness stretched before him, mirroring the endless night, a question sparked within him. Was this really the end? Could he extinguish the lantern's light without extinguishing the embers of hope within his soul? What would remain then? He gazed at the swirling mists, and for a moment, the whispers seemed to carry a seductive melody. Surrender your light, they hissed, and find peace at last. Your journey ends here. Let go and be free. But the seeker closed his eyes against the maddening whispers, taking a shuddering breath, his feet rooted to the shifting sands. The lantern's gentle warmth was the only certainty in this realm of fading memories. It was the last flicker of purpose in a world where all other lights had been extinguished. And as the seeker stood there, wrestling with his inner demons, the mist began to shift. It coalesced into shapes, drawing closer, reaching out with spectral fingers to touch his cloak. Hope, it hissed. Hope that burns brighter than any lantern. Hope that sustains even in the face of eternal night. Surrender your light and embrace the soothing embrace of oblivion. Hope is an illusion, a whisper of a lie that only prolongs your torment. It is easier to let go. Trust me, the mist beckoned, promising solace. Join me and end your suffering. And with that, the mist swirled faster, forming a vortex that reached towards the heavens. It pulsed with power, offering an easy way out, a release from the burden of carrying the last ember of hope. The seeker staggered, overwhelmed by the seductive allure of oblivion. The mists whispered sweet nothings, promising an end to his pain, a release from the weight of his burden. But amidst the chaos, a faint glimmer persisted, a tiny spark that refused to be extinguished. The lantern's light flickered within him, resilient and unwavering. He squeezed his eyes shut, battling the pull of the mist, clutching the lantern close. With a strangled cry, he fought to maintain his footing. The mist lashed out, tendrils snaking around his legs, threatening to drag him into its suffocating embrace. The seeker stumbled, fear constricting his throat. Yet even in the face of overwhelming darkness, that tiny spark within him refused to die. The lantern's light grew stronger, casting dancing shadows that defied the encroaching gloom. The mist howled in frustration, its voices echoing the despair that gnawed at his soul. It taunted him with visions of loved ones lost, of dreams shattered, of hopes abandoned. With each taunt, the vortex spun faster, reaching out like a grasping claw. But the seeker stood firm. Summoning a strength he didn't know he possessed, he raised his head, meeting the mist's furious gaze. His voice, hoarse but resolute, cut through the din. He won't surrender. Not yet. He had come too far, endured too much to extinguish the last flame of hope. Even in the face of overwhelming darkness, he clung to the flickering light. And in that moment of defiance, something stirred within the mist. A flicker of surprise, quickly replaced by a cold determination. Hope is a fragile thing, the mist hissed, but even the smallest ember can rekindle a great fire. If you persist, I will find a way to snuff it out. Then let it happen, the seeker cried, his voice ragged. But his grip on the lantern tightened. His resolve was forged in the fires of his journey, tempered by the countless trials he had faced. He may be the last dreamer, burdened with the weight of a dying world, but he would not surrender. Not while a single ember of hope remained. In the depths of the sea of stillness, time ceased to exist. But if there were moments, this was one of them. A battle of wills played out beneath the indifferent stars, a struggle between the seductive embrace of oblivion and the tenuous grasp of hope. As the mist surged and the seeker stood firm, an ancient power stirred deep within the sea of stillness. Sensing the intensity of emotions roiling beneath the surface, something stirred. It was not a sound, nor a vision, but a presence felt deep within the seeker's bones. The mists howled in frustration, its voices echoing the despair that gnawed at his soul. It taunted him with visions of loved ones lost, of dreams shattered, of hopes abandoned. But amidst the chaos, a faint glimmer persisted, a tiny spark that refused to be extinguished. And as the mist continued its relentless assault, the seeker found his footing. The lantern's light, once nearly extinguished, flared anew, casting dancing shadows that defied the encroaching gloom. The mist recoiled momentarily, taken aback by the sudden resurgence of light. But its voices persisted, weaving tales of hopelessness and despair. The seeker stood firm, drawing strength from the very essence of his being. He may be the last dreamer, he realized, but that didn't mean he had to surrender. The lantern in his hand thrummed with power, resonating with the whispers of hope that refused to be silenced. He wasn't just a seeker anymore. He was a keeper of the last light, a guardian of fading memories. And with each step he took, the land responded. Buds unfurled on withered branches. A lone bird sang a song of resilience, and the seeker continued his journey deeper into the whispering village. The presence felt deep within the seeker's bones grew stronger, guiding him, urging him forward. The mist, sensing the shift in the air, changed its tactics. It retreated, receding into the shadows, allowing the seeker to move freely, yet remaining ever present, waiting for him to falter. The seeker pressed on, his steps lighter now, the lantern held high. As he ventured deeper into the whispering village, the whispers of the mist faded, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the murmur of a gentle stream.